there it is. Okay. Go live. YouTube Studio is like super slow today. That's weird. Anyway. And audition. Still good. Every time it's been a while since the show, I'm like extra cautious because I don't want to have the problem. Okay. So yeah, we're back after an unplanned hiatus. So it wasn't COVID, but I got, and Emily also got, a ridiculous bacterial sinus infection. I took a whole week off work, plus that was the sickest I have been in over a decade. That was the worst.
You seem to get very sick, every so often.
Yeah, I get sick. In pre-COVID times, I feel like my average, like, being sick for like a few days, like actually sick, is about twice a year. Like, I tend to get sick in the spring. I tend to get sick in the fall. But during the COVID times, I really didn't get sick at all, except when we caught COVID once. But now...
But there have been some times where you've been, like, way sick, like sicker than I've ever been, like food poisoning time.
Oh, I mean, food poisoning I don't count because that's a different kind of thing. But in terms of, like, sinus infection like this, I haven't had a sickness like this in a long, long time. Usually it's just like a cold. But this was like a bacterial, take antibiotics, for real sinus infection I had to go to the doctor for. And it felt the worst of any sickness I have had in at least 10 years.
When I was in, I don't know how old I was, but I was definitely still in school, right? Not pre-college school. And the doctor said I had pneumonia and gave me antibiotics, but it didn't feel worse than any other coughing sickness I had ever had. So, but I stayed home for a whole week and I was happy about that.
Yep. The worst part was this wasn't a, quote, stay home, but really you're playing video games. It was a stay home and you don't want to play video games, which is the worst. You want to be sick enough to not have to work, but not so sick that you can't play video games. That's like the sweet spot, especially as a kid. But yeah, we're back. I don't anticipate any significant disruptions in Geek Nights for a while yet. Even though it's summer and we're doing stuff, that stuff doesn't seem to super overlap with Geek Nights, and we're going to be kind of mostly back to normal, I guess. There's so much gaming news that there's no way we can catch up on everything, but a few selections. I got one little news about Overwatch 2, which, while I still like that game, it is still very apparent that the fact that it is free to play has caused every problem this game has, and none of those problems existed in Overwatch 1, even though they're basically the same game. It's like a case study in how toxic free-to-play as a concept is to games, just in general. But Overwatch, Blizzard, they have announced, and they've shared details about, like, the banning situation, like when they permanently ban accounts and how they deal with that. And what they revealed is that since they launched Overwatch 2, they have permanently banned over 100,000 verified accounts, which appears to be, based on the numbers I was able to dig up from before, more bans than the entire history of Overwatch 1 combined, which makes sense if it's a free-to-play game now. Like, there's more people. You don't need to, like, spend $20 to get into the game to get banned and spend 20 more bucks. All you need is a phone number and you can make a new Overwatch account. Like, there's nothing they can do to stop you other than checking your phone number to see if it's been banned before. But this seems to be accelerating because they said that currently they're banning well more than 5,000 people a week just for attempting to cheat. Not even counting the people who are banned for harassment or banned for smurfing or banned for all the other things people might do. This is just people who are trying to cheat using hacks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, what really fascinates me is how literally none of these things were problems in Overwatch 1. Like, nobody cheated because you were out cash if you got caught cheating, and they aggressively banned people. But once the barrier to entry was just have a phone number, which they even had to go soft on because a lot of people had phone numbers from dubious websites that they banned for a while, but then a lot of poor people also use those websites. So they unbanned those carriers those quote carriers. They're basically just websites that give you dubious phone numbers. It's just a whole shit show. But It's only getting worse, and it seems like this is going to be a permanent problem for Overwatch because it's free to play. And I have no advice for this company other than you shouldn't have made your game free to play.
I think there is a way to do it, is that, if you want to have some sort of, the problem is that you get people playing for $0, right?
Yep.
And it's interfering with people who are playing seriously, competitively. And of course, we did a whole panel about how the competitive and the casual can't coexist right, in terms of game design, right? The design of the game itself can't accommodate both players. But what you could do in terms of this sort of meta structure around the game,
pay to be in the real competitive ladder.
Exactly. There could be the free-to-play mode. If you don't pay, you can do all this shit that doesn't actually matter.
Yep.
Play as Overwatch to your heart's content.
Play in quick play, even play at a ranked whatever. It's just you will not be playing with the people who paid dollars.
Exactly. And then it's just do a segregate. The thing is, I think the reason companies don't want to do that is because you'll basically get this you'll split your audience. And if your audience isn't big enough, if there's not enough players total, and a whole bunch of them are playing the serious mode because they paid money, and then the people who don't pay anything might end up being in a ghost town, or vice versa. So no one's going to pay because they're just happy playing for free, and the competitive people end up playing in a ghost town because there's no one else who's that serious who's going to pay money.
Yep. But here it's specifically, there is almost no disincentive to people who want to cheat in competitive modes to try, because the consequences of getting caught and banned are negligible as long as you can get another phone number.
Mm-hmm.
In some other news, Street Fighter 6 actually came out. We have not played it, but you may recall, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that Street Fighter 6...
I didn't even play Street Fighter 5. I played Street Fighter 4.
I also bought Street Fighter 4, and you know what? I sold my old fight stick because I don't really play fighting games anymore. Like, I let that ship sail.
I still have it, but I haven't used it. It's dusty.
Emily actually sold it for quite a bit of money because it was a special edition one, because I didn't care. That's just the one I bought. But it's old enough and fancy enough, and we even still had the box that, like, sweaty nerds were willing to pay a lot for that thing.
I do not have the box or anything, but it works, and it is...
Mine was in mint condition because I used it for a few months, and then I stopped playing Street Fighter because I'm not good at Street Fighter, and I don't like Street Fighter.
Yeah, well.
So, but if you may recall, when Street Fighter 6 was announced, there was, I'm not even going to dignify this with the word controversy. There was a small but extremely vocal minority of extremely angry, sweaty nerds on the internet who were freaking out that it is ruining Street Fighter. And what they were freaking out about is extra funny. And I'm linking to this article because a lot of what this article, which is a review of Street Fighter 6, talks about is the thing that set of people was mad about. Street Fighter 6 has 3 control schemes now. Well, I guess 4 if you count just make your own control scheme. Like, you could just map things however you want. But control scheme number 1 is regular old Street Fighter. You got 3 different severities of the 2 different kinds of attacks, the typical 6-button configuration Street Fighter. Then you've got the mode where it's still mostly that, except there are also buttons just set to, like, do the special move. Like Hadouken button.
So more than 6 buttons, you got to find more buttons somewhere.
Yep, and it consolidates a little bit.
So if you have a fight stick, you don't have these extra buttons. What is it, like start that does it? Or
yep.
Like
so I don't want to try to explain it because without diagrams, it's actually kind of hard to explain in words. But if you go to this article, it actually shows screenshots and examples of how this works. But it's basically like the mid-tier mode, which is actually the mode that makes me interested in trying Street Fighter again in a way that I have not been able to play a game like Street Fighter for a long time. But they call this mode modern control type, which is why the nerds were mad, because that implied that classic is eventually going to go away or be sidelined, and modern is what the company
until it goes away. Don't be mad.
Yeah. I mean, kids, if you're mad about this, like, think about me and my inverted controls. Guess what? Every single fucking game still has an inverted mode. Like, it's not a problem.
I mean, don't give me. I don't take any slippery slope arguments from anyone. If you think that we shouldn't do something because slippery slope, it's good. That's just the first step to it.
Like, but if we ban Nazis, what if they ban everyone? It's like, well, did they ban anyone but Nazis yet? Is there any indication they're going to? Call me when they ban someone else.
If the step that is being taken is not a bad step in itself, take that step. If then another step is taken that is a bad step, I would say, don't take that bad step. Only take that step.
Slippery slope can only be used.
Get the slippery slopes out of here.
Slippery slope
step being taken is good. Take it.
Is an argument that is only used to show a pattern. For example, Disney re-upping Mickey Mouse shit every time it came up so many times in a row. That is a slippery slope because the slope is a trajectory you can use as an argument.
The first step was a bad step. I would have stopped him.
Yeah, I mean, the first step was a bad step. But that was a slope. It was a bad slope.
It's just, but that's the slippery slope specifically means that, yes, somebody wants to do a thing and make a change that is in a general direction that if a more extreme change were taken, that would be bad.
Yep.
And they want to avoid taking this less extreme beginning change because then it might make that later change more palatable and more possible, right, than it is currently. Right? It's like we don't want to do this good thing because it's in a bad direction. It's like, don't care about that.
Yep.
Right?
So and then there's a third mode that they call dynamic control type. And the article calls it button mashing mode. And it's actually pretty cool. Like, I kind of want to poke at it just to see how it feels. But basically, in this mode, you've only got a few buttons. You've got basically 3 kinds of attacks and the directions.
Special move or something like that?
No, just attack number 1, attack number 2, attack number 3. And if you hit one of those buttons, your character will do whatever fucking attack the game thinks makes sense based on where you are, where the opponent is, what you're doing, what the opponent's doing, whether or not you're in the air. And the 3 different buttons are just kind of per character. So you can kind of control what each character does broadly. But that's it. It's just mash buttons and it'll kind of just work.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, pro fighting game people are mad, right? Because they have that sort of narrow-minded attitude. But like, look, no tournament is gonna let people use 2 and 3, and it's no
tournament they care about will use modes 2 and 3.
Sure. Also, 2 and 3, if even if someone was allowed to use 2 or 3, they'd probably lose to someone who was good using 1.
Yeah,
right?
like, look, say we're fencing.
Not gonna help you.
I'm a mediocre fencer. Like, I know the basics. I'm okay at it. Imagine if you let me just cheat and have a sword that's like 50% longer. An Olympian's still gonna kick the shit out of me. Like, it's not gonna matter.
Right. There's some kid out there who just got old enough to start playing this kind of game, right? And it's possible that they might either be able to play it and enjoy it more because it's easier than if 1 was the only mode, in which case they might play it once and give up on it, right? And that may I think at least one kid out there will become a fighting game kid and move away, start with mode 3 or 2 and move to 1. At least one kid, right? It's like, how many people are going to give up on fighting games and say this is garbage because of mode 2 and 3?
Yeah,
None,
so
right?
many sports have to worry about how do you keep a pipeline of new talent coming in, and fighting games have a big barrier to entry. So if you,
it's like, does the existence of T-ball and Little League with only 6 innings hurt baseball?
Is pickleball destroying tennis? No, pickleball is not destroying tennis.
There are some tennis people who are like, I heard like John McEnroe like insulting pickleball, even though he was playing it for money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'd say about pickleball is that if I had to describe it, I'm not saying this negatively, but I'm saying it the way it is. It is tennis with no athleticism required whatsoever.
I mean, that's sort of the point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what it is. Anyone who's mad that that's what it is mad about something else.
But the point is, it's like, it doesn't hurt the existence of tennis for another. It doesn't.
In fact, I'd go further.
With Control Scheme 1 for 2 and 3 to exist. Now, if they got rid of Control Scheme 1, right, then I would say, that is a bad step, right? You're ruining the competitive scene. Don't take that step.
Well, what? Right? So what if
adding 2 and 3 is not a bad step?
If everyone who starts playing Street Fighter prefers the modern scheme because it's more fun, and that scene grows bigger than the classic scene, which again I say is not a problem because the kinds of sweaty people who would still care even if their mode did actually get minimized or disappear over time, every gaming convention on Earth still has a GameCube Smash Brothers tournament somehow.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. Right. So first of all, if that were to happen, right? Well, the people who really like the old, harder way, all Street Fighter 1 through 6 still exist. If Street Fighter 7 doesn't include it, right? Or, if it does include it, but no tournaments are using it, it's like, well, you can still play those old games if you want to, right? There'll still be more people like you alive who are still playing the old way. And also, like you just said, Smash Brothers, modern control scheme, right? Even though when you think about it compared to, the classic Street Fighter control scheme, it seems like baby mode.
Oh, it's a lot like Smash Brothers if you look at the diagram.
It's a lot like Smash Brothers, which is a serious and difficult competitive fighting game with a high skill cap. So it's like, is it really... 3 is a baby mode, right? Yeah. But is 2 really a baby mode? It's really just more like Smash Brothers, except it's Street Fighter. So I don't know if 2 is really a problem for a competitor. I think there could be viable competitive. It would be different, clearly a different game than Control Scheme 1, but I think it's perfectly viable as a skill-based competitive scene.
And I would argue further
on Control Scheme 2.
If that became a bigger competitive scene, like there were just more people doing it, then that's a good thing. If it's popular, it's good in this type of context.
Yeah. Now the problem is that Street Fighter, as I don't know all the details of it, but from my awareness of what was going on with 5 and presumably 6, there's all sorts of, evil money-making shit, right? Not only does the game cost $60, but there's all sorts of DLCs and cosmetics.
Oh, there's so much crap in the menu of Street Fighter 6 that I don't...
It's basically all trying to steal your money. It's like...
You know what it looks like?
For those reasons, I might be avoiding Street Fighter.
The menus in Street Fighter 6, like if you click on options or try to do anything, look a lot like Fortnite, which is a bad direction. Fortnite's a great game. Fortnite's menus are the exact same kind of toxic nonsense that you just described.
So yeah, I'm sure someone else can give you all the actual information about that, but
yeah,
I don't think your $60 is gonna get you all the street fighting, right? Is what I...
Yeah, if $60 just gets me Ryu and Ken, like...
I don't know what it's gonna get you, but
I can't tell what it gets you.
Yeah.
So one last little news, because we can't cover everything, but I feel like this has to be talked about. So Wizards of the Coast called the fucking Pinkertons to raid a kid's house.
This isn't old news already. We just been there for so long.
Because he had magic cards that weren't officially out yet, possibly not even directly on purpose.
So, I think the name Pinkerton has a long history going back, like a long
and you might be you. There's a few progressions. You first might think Pinkertons. I remember those from social studies class. Weren't they the guys who were like cudgeling railroad strikers to death outside of factories? And the answer is yes. Or weren't those like Wild West violent people? Yes.
Yes,
are they still around? Actually, yes. And are they still violent and have they killed people in recent memory? Also, yes.
Yep. But basically, what are they really today? It's like today they're basically private eyes.
They're a private security guard and detective agency. Headquartered in actually...
instead of having to hire a private eye who's just a name on a door, it's a company that employs many private eyes and security guards.
Yeah. Founded during the Civil War to violently suppress organized labor.
Their history is dark and full of evil, but like if you own an office building or a concert venue...
You still shouldn't hire the Pinkertons. Hire any other security company.
Right, but it's like they're today, in the present time, they're mostly just a security company that's, they just have a dark history, which is why I agree I wouldn't choose them. But, like all the other security companies, are basically...
But I guess, here's what I would say. Zoom out a little bit. If you're hiring a security company and you could hire any of a dozen random security companies, or you could hire the one that's literally the same company that was founded during the Civil War to murder strikers, I don't think that company should continue to exist in a continued unbroken chain.
But it's like the story, that has nothing to do with the story of WotC.
Yeah.
It's like if
you're WotC, you don't hire basically security guard to go raid some kid's house.
Yes, it's like the Pinkerton stuff, because of the history, like blows up the sensationalism of the story. The reality, it's like if you want to look at the story more realistically, it's just like WotC hired a private detective to go and recover stolen goods.
So
right?
according in the reporting, they say to intimidate and threaten the YouTuber.
Well, I mean,
Partly, and it seems reading between the lines that the police didn't care because there didn't seem to be a crime. Like, the kid just made a YouTube video with some things he had. So there wasn't clear.
Yeah, but those were unreleased magic cards that were illicitly obtained.
Yes, but the illicitness did not seem to rise to the level of cops in any way being willing to care, nor did it seem to rise to the level of wizards in any way being willing to sue or take normal legal action.
That's the part.
Because I don't think that kid would have gotten in trouble. I'm not a lawyer, but based on everything I can see here, I don't think WotC could have done much about this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that bothers me, is that, like, yeah, you know, for this kind of situation, you could have just hired a lawyer to take care of it. You probably have lawyers on staff, right? You don't need to you go to the lawyer first, right? But, you know, the security angle, if you think about it, you know, what if your, bike was stolen? It's like, well, the cops won't help you either, right? It's like, if I had a bunch of money and it was cheaper to hire, security to go recover my bike, than buy a new one, why wouldn't I do that?
Well, but he was totally willing to, the YouTuber was totally willing to give the cards back if they were illegally obtained, though it seems like it might have been the game store just messed up and sent the wrong box. Or maybe, we don't know exactly what happened, but it was something like that. So, it seems what WotC was actually mad about was not that he had the cards, but that he made a YouTube video about them. And that is almost definitely not in any way illegal. Partly because also, it's not like he had an embargo contract signed. If anyone, the game store fucked up, and the game store is the only entity that should be able to get in trouble here.
Yeah, I mean,
And even then, I don't respect embargoes on companies anyway. I kind of love it when someone gets a copy of a game early and makes a YouTube video about it.
I think this is a common problem, nowadays, right? It's like people had Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom copies early. Why? Well, because they insist on still having physical cartridges, which means that they're in the targets in the back, in the warehouse part before they're on the shelves. They can't show up at the store on release day. That's not they can't guarantee that, right? They got to be there early, or they might be there early. You don't know. UPS isn't holding.
All right, so you got hundreds of thousands of people all around the world being paid minimum wage to handle boxes filled with thousands of copies of the hottest video game of the year.
Right. It's like, if you don't want your shit getting out early, digital only, right? It's like, that's all. If you put out a physical good and you distribute it, you just have to accept the fact that you can't have this sort of firm, guaranteed release date. Yeah, you can guarantee that everything will be there by that date, but something might get out a couple days early. It's going to happen. You can't do anything about it, unless you control the entire supply chain, through a very narrow network, right? It's like you only ship it with your own couriers that you're paying, something ridiculous.
And partly what I blame here, because this is not nearly as big of a concern in most other industries, but there's a combination of certain nerdy intellectual properties are heavily conflated with YouTube streaming and the concept of spoilers, and that concept being treated extremely overly seriously by both the companies and the hype companies and the marketing and the players and consumers, that leads to the situation, because none of this stuff seems to violate laws or contracts. It just messes with their long-term marketing strategies, and people get a little too sweaty over it.
Yeah, I still have never heard, it's one of those things where it's I really want to ask, a Tim Apple or a Nintendo, right? It's yes, we know you keep things secret, right? And it's yes, we can think up many reasons, right, why you might do that, right? Reasonable explanations. But I've never heard you say the reasons for the secrecy. And are you sure? Do you have evidence to show that not being secret will actually hurt you in a tangible way? What if you were super open and just had a Magic development blog and talked about all the cards you're working, like every day, all the Magic game designers put out like a whole report of like, these are the ideas we were working on today, right? It's like, would that hurt or help Magic? You don't know because they just default to secrecy and don't even try the alternative, right? So how do they know?
And
right?
It's like Nintendo. How could someone having a live stream of a new Zelda game before it's officially out in any way impact sales? Because anyone who would not buy the game because they watched someone live stream it, they were going to watch the live stream that is finished the day after the game comes out. So it literally could not impact sales in any way that is plausible.
Nope. So
the worst part is, and I'm quoting here from the Wikipedia article with several citations, according to Wizards of the Coast, they hired the Pinkertons after several attempts had been made to contact the individual in private with no response. There's a lot of, I'd say, buried leads behind that kind of statement. They're basically saying we tried to email this person and they wouldn't answer us, so then we sent the Pinkertons after them. That means that no other method...
There's a lot of in-between you could have done. Like, the lawyer part. A lawyer can contact someone a lot better than a security team.
The worst part is, a lot of Magic the Gathering people online were extremely supportive of this because they were really mad that spoilers about their stupid game appeared on the internet that might have poisoned their...
Watch those YouTube videos.
Yep. So there were a lot of Magic kids basically on WotC's dick praising them for being so aggressive about this.
Whatever.
Put a little marker. Let's see if I can put a marker in the track. Okay, when I'm recording, it doesn't do it. Anyway. But anyway, things of the day. So, I'm a big fan of someone does something in a sport and then that thing gets banned for various reasons, like the old hockey tricks or whatever.
Or like, many figure skating backflips.
Oh, yeah. But a technique I was unaware of, and this 3-minute video is just fascinating. Apparently, there is a technique that, for some people, will just let you throw a shot put further. But this technique literally is do a cartwheel in the circle and throw it as part of doing a cartwheel. Like a forward jumping cartwheel. And it looks
sort of
awesome.
Imagine, like, I'm not an expert on, like, whatever the biomechanics, sport, whatever, that whatever the science. There is a science of, like, body movement, right, for athletic purposes. But, like, I could imagine, though, that, like, well, if you do a cartwheel, you got your hands on the ground, right?
Yep.
So that's going to give you, like, your hand is going to, with the ball, is going to be as close to the ground as possible and then go up to as high as it can go, basically as quickly as you can to get the, the greatest launch velocity, right? Usually you see shot put people, they, like, spin.
So this video actually shows an example of all modern reasonable shot put techniques. Like, it's a really good video. Like, there's the step back, there's the glide, there's the spin, which is the one you're thinking of that I believe is what most people do today.
That's what most people at the Olympics do, yeah.
And the best part about this video is that basically at every level of shot put, like high schools, colleges, the NCAA, even up to the Olympics, there's a big debate over, well, is this allowed or not? Because by a strict reading of most of the rules in all these different leagues, this technique didn't break any of the written rules of, like, you will be disqualified if you do this. And because people started doing this, like, just recently, this is a new development. One by one, basically every single organization has added a rule specifically banning the cartwheel.
Right. Well, the question is, right, is that, throughout the history of sports, right, there have been people developing new techniques. Everyone praises the Fosbury flop, right? It's like, someone finally did the high jump backwards when we added the cushy mat.
Yep.
And that's the way everyone does the high jump, right? And it's, no one was like, ban the flop, you have to jump over the stick facing forwards, right? It's praised. It's like, yes, they fought that guy, genius. He found a new way to jump high and get over the stick. Wonderful. Now everyone does it that way, right? So it's like the only reason, the legitimate reason to ban a technique in a sport such as this, right, would be if it was dangerous. Like the ice,
if it was dangerous
against the figure skating backflip is that if you have it, if you allow it, everyone's going to have to do it. And if you fuck it up, you hit your head on the ice and die, right? Or damage it severely. And so we can't have people like, out there trying to practice it, or having someone at the Olympics crack their skull open on the ice. Or
shot put, though, is an extra special situation because there are tons of techniques that are way better than what's allowed today, and they're all banned more because they make the sport silly, and it just becomes a throw a baseball as hard as you can almost sport. Like, the rules are weird about, like, you can't throw it from behind the line of your shoulders, and you have to start holding it by your neck. They're like arbitrary constraints because otherwise the sport kind of doesn't work anymore.
I mean, it's still the sport of, here's a really heavy ball, throw it as far as you can. Like, if you just limit the rules to, and you can't leave this circle while you're throwing, that's obvious. Otherwise, you get a running start, and then it's stupid, right? But
I don't think a running start would help that much, though.
I don't think
for javelin it would, but not for this.
Running start. It's literally throw, a heavy metal ball. It's like, what do you care what the fucking technique? As long as it's not dangerous, right? Because it is a heavy metal ball. There are dangerous ways you could hurt somebody, right? But as long as it's not dangerous, what do we care what method someone uses to throw it? Whoever throws it the farthest, that's fucking impressive, however they do it. Right?
And I will say, having watched a bunch of videos of people doing the cartwheel, it does not appear to be more dangerous than a cartwheel, and cartwheels are not particularly dangerous.
Right. If you could demonstrate to me that it's dangerous the way the ice skating backflip is dangerous, then I'll say, fine, ban it. But if you can't, then I'm just going to say, hey, you just sort of actually hurt the sport of shot put because it could, the flop helped the high jump, right?
Yeah.
So,
make it more interesting.
Sport by having advancements, right?
So, but the side effect is I started learning more about banned things, and let me tell you, the javelin throws got some fucking bullshit that used to happen. Talk about some danger. Never mind the hammer throw.
Well, javelins are more dangerous.
And the hammer throw, that thing is terrifying. Like, I am legitimately afraid of hammer throws.
I love to watch the hammer throw because it's terrifying.
Yeah. I want to be behind a fence if I'm watching it, though.
Everyone's usually behind a fence except the person throwing the hammer.
Yep. So you got a thing of the day?
So here's, just some YouTube channel with some kid. What's his name? Tukov, something like that? What?
Tuvok 12.
Okay,
Tuvok is the name of a Star Trek character.
Okay. So anyway, it's this kid and his friends, right? And it's just a really wholesome sort of, what you expect from a TikTok YouTube thing. But what they do is they got soccer ones and they got basketball ones, but I like the basketball ones better. And they basically, he's got a whole team of kids, right? And they go out to a crowded public place and they got an entire basketball net, full size, right? And so most of the kids are carrying the basketball net, right? The full size net with the everything, right? The Tuvok kid, who I think is the main kid, he's got a basketball, right? And then they got a camera guy who you don't see because they're holding the camera. And then what they do is they go out to people and the kids pick the net up, and at the same time he throws the ball at somebody gently, expecting that person to like receive the ball and take a shot, right? And then he just makes a compilation of all the different people, right, whether they take a shot or not, and sort of rates them, on a scale of 1 to 10.
Like 3 out of 10.
And first of all, right, so it's really wholesome. Like, you're just out in public, someone tosses you a basketball, a net appears out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, take a shot. And then if someone makes the shot, they party, like, they get all excited. And it's a lot of fun.
I mean, if this happened to me and I somehow made the shot because I'm a terrible shot in basketball, I'd definitely be doing a Hulk Hogan or something.
Yeah, so the things to learn, even though it's just this cute little concept, right? There's a lot going on here. First of all, you can see these sad, terrible humans who like kick the ball away, ignore it, dodge it, block it, get mad. I think I saw in one of the videos someone takes the ball and like tries to throw it away somewhere because they're angry. Those are all terrible human beings, and what we should do is we should divide the earth into the people who take the shot and the people who don't, and the people who don't can go to Australia, and then we can have the rest of the earth, and that would be peace on earth, right?
Nobody who can't take the shot would survive Australia.
That's exactly the point. And the second thing, right, is what was I going to say?
What were you going to say?
Whatever. I forget now. The point is, the people who don't take the shots suck. That's the point, right? And let's have
a good reason to. Like, you broke your arm and you literally can't lift it, or like
there's no one like that.
Yeah, there is.
It's just it's just such a wholesome concept, and I love how he uses the clip from the Lil Nas X song where he's like, this one is for the champions, and then they take the shot every time.
No, I love celebratory, low-key, fun, like stage human interaction like this. Like, this is exactly the kind of thing that would evoke.
It's not hurting anybody.
You know what it reminds me of?
A moment of joy that takes less than like 10 seconds into people's lives.
Well, like when we were at RIT, and every now, like, on a college campus, for any of you who are, a lot of the listener are pretty young, and I haven't been to college yet, or haven't been to college in like 20 or 30 years. There's not a lot of middle ground in terms of the listener of Geek Nights, but there was something about living on a college campus where low-key fun stuff like this, like strangers would accost you politely with something funny or weird on a pretty regular basis, and that is a better life than never interacting with anyone on the street.
Yeah, and it's just now that sort of shit is on YouTube, whereas back in the day you could only experience it if you were in such a place.
Yeah.
Right? And people weren't doing it to get they were just doing it for fun of itself and not, necessarily doing it to make videos.
Yep. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, which we will do the show on Thursday, The Satanic Verses. We delayed 2 weeks.
We still didn't do a show on that.
No, because I got sick and we couldn't.
All right. It's been a while.
Oh, what a fucking... I want to read everything this guy wrote. Just his prose is... This is top tier prose. But the thing I like the most, not to get into it because we're going to do a show on it, is there's always this sort of...
Immediately gets into it. Not to get into it immediately.
But there's this pattern of his writing that is consistent through the whole book. And it stuck with me. Was this... He'll just throw in 2 words in a row in a sentence that grammatically do not work, but they convey either a duality or a dissonance, like the condemnation, damnation of man. Like lines like that. That sort of like florid prose. That pattern was so consistent and so well used, and that's the kind of shit I love about reading a book like this that is, to be really blunt, not common in most science fiction or nerdy literature, and is much more common in what a lot of people call literature with a capital L.
But this is a fantasy novel.
It is just a fantasy novel, but it is written with the toppest tier of the art of writing words on a page in a way to evoke feelings.
Anyway. All right. Other meta things.
The website is like real imminent, and we both have to do some stuff now to move into like
pretty close. It really just needs like some front end action.
Yep.
It's there are missing features, but they are not features which are essential for launch, right? It's still not where I'd want it to be, but it's complete enough and better enough than the current website that it can go up, and it's not like anyone goes to our website anyway.
Yeah, the website's just an anchor point. Really, all that matters is the RSS and the databases and all that other stuff.
Exactly, and that's the stuff that's really, solid. So.
Yep, so sometime in the near future, be ready for possibly a week of like only one show, and that's the show we use for the cut transition. Like, we'll see what happens. We got to sort all this out, and we can finally say goodbye to Geek Nights Web 2.0 edition.
You can look at it on archive.org or whatever.
Yep.
Wave
other meta bits? Let's see. What else is going on? No, I got nothing else new. No cons. Still PAX West.
A long time from now. So go to the beach and wait for that.
Yep, we're going to be at PAX West. I imagine doing between 1 and 2 panels, as is typical. So I expect it's going to be a full-on normal PAX for me and Scott and the core Geek Nights crew. So if you go to PAX West, we should play some games together because we will be there playing games.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's just get right into it. Now, if you care about spoilers, just don't listen to this because just go play the game.
What spoiler could there possibly
Guess what?
be?
So watching the opening video, like playing the game when you do the initial scenario, like go down into the deep, the whole time it's just Zelda's like, I wonder what could be down here. And I just couldn't help but yell, it's Ganon, every time she said anything. And it just kept going. Like this scene, like, oh, there's this. Ooh,
I wonder who the bad guy is. Is it Ganon?
But if you somehow think that anything significant could be spoiled for you in this game, just don't listen, because why do you need to hear anyone talk about the game? Because you're playing it right now and you're afraid of spoilers. So just turn this episode off and just go play your freaking game, because we're going to lightly spoil stuff because we're going to talk about what we've experienced so far.
Right.
But also, we have not beaten it. We'll probably do a sort of final thoughts at some point in the future, but we're playing it. I am probably like an eighth of the way through, if I had to guess.
Yeah. So Breath of the Wild, right, came out in 2017. So it's a 6-year-old game, right?
And you got to remember, we cannot understate, or I cannot overstate, that, in my opinion, it is the best Legend of Zelda game that had ever been released up to that point. Not that there are not great Zelda games, but Breath of the Wild, it felt like it took the stated intent of the original Legend of Zelda, Zelda 1 on the Famicom, and fully realized what they wanted it to be, which was a game about exploring through the woods like you're a kid again and finding things.
But anyway, so it actually, people don't remember, that game even came out on the Wii U when the Switch was super new and the Wii U was super old. It came out on both. And so presumably around that time, they must have started on the next one, right? Somewhere around there.
Yep.
And as what we seem to have heard from interviews with Aonuma and other things, right, is that it seems like Tears of the Kingdom was basically done like quite a while ago. Well, quote done, right? Done-ish, like a year plus ago. And then they spent like about a year just polishing what could have been a done game, right?
And that polish, I'll say right now, it shows.
Right. So when they announced Tears of the Kingdom, like we're going to make, or at least when they announced we're going to make Breath of the Wild 2, I was like, well, what are you going to do, right? Every Zelda game to this point was always, I think most of them at least, were like, all right, it's a new game on a new map, possibly even a new timeline, a new universe, but it's still, the same Zelda Link Ganon deal forces, right?
And there were two sort of main threads. Like there was one thread that it started, I'd say, with Zelda 3 there's a certain kind of interlocking gated open up areas with items quest structure. And then there's a more like directly narrative structure type of game. But those are broad, vague ideas.
The point is that none of those games had direct sequels.
Well, Zelda 2 is direct. It was stated in the instruction book in Japanese and in English. It was a direct, contiguous sequel from Zelda 1.
But it wasn't a direct sequel in the sense that, like, it was the same exact kind of
Yeah, you weren't on
game,
this.
right?
It was a completely different kind of game on a completely different map. And
exactly.
But it was the story-wise, it was a direct sequel.
Sure, but when you say we're going to make Breath of the Wild 2, right? It's like, well, it's going to be basically like it's not going to be a different kind of game from Breath of the Wild the way Zelda 2 is a different kind of game from Zelda 1, right? It's going to be like the same game engine, and it's like, well, if it's the same map, it's like, I was thinking like, are they, on the one hand, when they say Breath of the Wild 2, I'm like, are they just going to like change it a little bit? And I'm like, I'm not hyped for that at all.
Yep.
But then it's like, well, it's Nintendo. Why they don't do anything small time like that, right? That's not the thing they
My
do.
original thoughts were either it was going to be a radically reinvented version of the existing map, or it was going to be the same engine but a completely different map, like it goes to another continent. That was my guess.
There had to be some plot, like Link goes to another world or some shit, right? So they basically did, if you don't know already, they did both things, right? Number one, they came up with a plot plus mechanical structure to keep and also basically change the entire map.
Yep.
Right?
The fact that I can get lost in a place.
They're generally in the same place, and some things are almost exactly the same, but almost nothing. It's like a completely new, it's like if you left your town, even though I guess plot-wise, it's only a few years from Breath of the Wild.
Like 5 years, something like that.
It's like if you moved away from home and came back 100 years later, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
But also, on top of that, they did the thing that Final Fantasy IV did, where Final Fantasy IV, if you don't remember, you're playing this game, and then you're like, all right, it's a Final Fantasy, there's a big world map, and at some point, you go into a volcano, and there's a whole fucking other world map down there. And then you go up into the moon, and there's a whole fucking other world map up there.
they felt like, well, we have this main overworld map, and it's a direct sequel. It's the same Hyrule, so we can't change it too much. How can we, right? So what they did is they added 2 more maps, right? An underground map, which is as big as the overworld map, and then they put stuff in the sky, and the sky way up high. There's not too much of it, I guess, surface area wise. But it's still a whole nother world. Right?
And it is dense with content, and there are puzzles that span those maps within the same direct thread.
It's like, okay, we're going to make a direct sequel, but we're going to triple this, almost triple the size of the game and redo the surface area that we had to start with, right? So it is a full-on new deal. It's not some like light touch, incremental upgrade, right?
But on top of that, they took, because there's 2 more big additions. One is the plot story, which I'm going to talk about briefly, and then there's what they did mechanically, which is sort of the most important thing. But plot-wise,
clearly,
they
admitted this, right? They watched everyone playing Breath of the Wild doing ridiculous bullshit with the powers that were available. The magnet power, the inertia power, what were the other ones?
Yeah, well, but basically they seem to have looked at how people played, and one, they zoomed in on, was there anything that was annoying to players? And they just fixed those things. There's a ton of quality of life stuff, like the recipes for the food, all these like little things they just tweaked. Like if you open a chest and your inventory's full, you can drop something right there. You don't have to close the chest, go into your inventory, open it again. But then those machines, they're like, oh, so people would like take minecarts to make weird machines. We're going to make that a primary mechanic of the game now, and we're going to overdevelop it.
It's not make it a primary mechanic of the game. It was like, we are going to make that the game, right?
Yep.
They saw the high-level Breath of the Wild people, the people who kept playing it and playing it and playing it and getting lots and lots out of it, right? Using those abilities that you got, right, to do ridiculous nonsense, using boxes and balls and barrels.
And now they're like, all right, you want fans and jets and lasers? You want to make robots?
So fine. That's what you like to do? People have fun doing that, right? But really, in Breath of the Wild, only pro people can really explore that, and the space is not very large. So it's like, okay, that's clearly a thing people are doing to have fun. We're going to make the second game all about that. We'll make it easy for anyone to do, and we'll expand it 100,000-fold.
Yep.
Right? And we'll make that the core focus of the game, right? Literally everything in the game is focused on building contraptions and construction and making, devices and all that sort of nonsense, and finding clever ways to use the new and different abilities. And so even if they hadn't changed the map, and even if they hadn't added 1 and a fraction more maps, right, to the existing map, that alone, right, would have been enough. Just change all the abilities to make it a new game. But they did both things, right?
And
so
it is like, it was something when I realized, wait, so I can just make a plane and put an engine on it and fly it around, and then like, what if I attach a flamethrower to the front? Yeah, that totally works.
Yep, go right ahead. Be our guest, right? And I think the genius of it is that, it's like you typically in games where you're a character occupying a space, flight is sort of like the cheat mode. That's like what you want to achieve, right? You think about like Kirby's Adventure, where it's like you could just fly over a lot of levels without even doing anything.
And even in Breath of the Wild, like, a lot of times it felt cheap when what I would do is find the tallest fucking point I could get to, jump off of it, and glide somewhere.
Or in Mario Brothers, you just use P-Wing. Right? Or, you get even, just get on top of the bricks in an underground world and run across the top and get to the end and skip everything, right? Flying has always been the cheat. Well, what they did is they're like, okay, well, first of all, we're going to put some stuff that's so high that it's like, yeah, you could fly anywhere, go ahead. We'll put a bunch of stuff for you to get even by flying, so you're rewarded for flying.
Yeah.
But some stuff is so high, you maybe can't even reach it with easy flying. You're going to have to think about an even better way to fly. Good luck.
Never mind getting into the deep and all those caves and everything everywhere.
Well, and then we're even going to give you an ability that lets you, if you have a ceiling within a close enough distance, fly directly up through that ceiling up to the surface wherever you are.
There are so many good puzzles that rely on that.
Right. It's like, go up anywhere. You want to go up? Be our guest. Go up all you want.
You want to go down? Go down all you want. Go fly across the entire map.
You can't go. That's the thing. You can't go down all you want. It's pretty hard to go down. right? And there's no easy way to go down always.
Well, it is easy to go down between Sky World and Land World.
Yeah,
and
you just jump down.
And
but I'm saying, like, but if you want to go down into something, right? Let's say you're on a mountain and the shrine sensor's going off, and you know there's a shrine under your feet inside this mountain. It's like, all right, find the cave entrance. There's no other way you're going to get in there.
Yep.
Right? You got to go find the cave entrance and fight your way through the cave. There's no downwards teleport, and you can't go into the underworld and teleport up. That's not allowed, right? You can only teleport up in like the same area. So, going down, they made that the challenge, and they flipped everything upside down, right? From what's normal in video games, which is where usually going up and flying is difficult.
And I guess what's really neat is how radically different those three world maps feel as well. Like the bottom world, the deep, it's terrifying when you first see it, but once you sort of figure out its deal, it really feels like the caves in Naoshika, just straight up.
It's just dark, right? Once you light it up, it's like, okay.
Yep.
But I think the only problem is that even if you light it up, it's not scary, but the bad guys down there are more dangerous. So
yep. And also it is difficult to navigate down there, and
it's dark. I think that's the other. In an open world game, it's like, okay, sure, you can go anywhere you want, right? But it's hard to go anywhere. Usually, a lot of times when I'm in the sky or the normal overworld, I take out the binoculars and I'm looking all around, right? Scouting out, seeing where I'm going to go. Ooh, there's a shrine over there. There's a thing over there. There's a, right? Oh, that looks good. In the darkness, you can only throw so many bright bloom whatevers, right? And see so far. If you haven't lit up the lamps yet, it's like, okay, which direction you want to go? Into the darkness or attack the other darkness?
Yep.
See what's out there.
Or hope you find a map that gives you a waypoint to try to get to. But the clever game design, usually when you have waypoints like that in the deep, if you just point yourself in the minimap straight at that waypoint, that is probably the worst possible way to get there. You've got to approach it more like it's a real place.
And I guess much like Breath of the Wild, you still have the sort of challenge of, if you want to climb over a thing instead of, flying or something, right? You can sort of use your stamina and try to,
or build a car.
Yeah. You got to find your, sometimes there's like a direct, correct way, intended way to go somewhere, like up a path, but you can go up another way if you can make it happen, right? Yeah.
Yep. The other big change they made is that instead of having all these different kinds of arrows, and I really think this is an important change because it leads to a bigger concept about this game, about why I think it feels so satisfying. Instead, you can just apply anything in your inventory to an arrow, and they all do crazy different stuff.
Yep, they gave the fuse ability, right? You can just attach things to your weapons or your armor, or well, not your armor, but your shields, your arrows, and your weapons.
Yep.
You can mix and match, right? And that's sort of, they put a plot thing in there, right? It's like, aha.
The decayed weapons.
Right. It's like all the weapons are decayed, right? So now there's a plot reason that they're all rusting on you, right? Okay, so you get weapons, but then you combine the weapons with something else. Like, I'll attach this tree trunk to my sword, and now it's a tree trunk sword.
Or I'll get this really long, like, shaped horn from a particular enemy and put it on a stick, and now I basically got a naginata.
Right. It's like, you can get creative with your combinations, and it's like, that's a whole mechanic of like choosing and making your weapons.
But those combined, coupled with the machine building, leads to, I think, a bigger change, because the most fun in Breath of the Wild was before you had a bunch of good weapons and you had to like solve problems like, oh, there's monsters there. I'm going to roll bombs down on them until they die. Or you get to the one challenge island where you're naked and alone and have to play like your early game again, and like how fun that was. The time in Breath of the Wild until you're strong enough and have enough equipment to where you're not doing that anymore is pretty short. The time in Tears of the Kingdom until you're not doing shit like that, I don't think you hit that point before you beat the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is no point where you think, I got enough good weapons, I can just fight things. No. As far as I've played, I am still doing sneaky shit to beat monsters. Like, it is still like I'm naked and alone on that island from Breath of the Wild 1.
Well, I think they also, some of the enemies are much more dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And, I think the other thing is that it's like, in Breath of the Wild, it's like, okay, you got 100 bokoblin horns. What good are they?
You're gonna sell them to Beetle.
You could sell them. You can maybe, it might be some quests where someone asks for them. You might be able to there might be some recipes that use them for cooking, but otherwise, you're just collecting bokoblin horns for what, right?
Yep.
Whereas here, every single thing you can collect now has a use because of the fuse ability.
And I am constantly making specific, like I know I'm going to head into the deep. I'm like making weapons and things and preparing for that specific journey. And they've interlocked all the resource cycles so that like going into the deep, you'll naturally accrue the kinds of things you need to do sky stuff. And doing sky stuff, you naturally accrue the kinds of things you need to go into the deep. And all the loops.
Sometimes
mostly.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just mixed up all over.
Well, like you get Zoanite mostly in the deep. You get charges mostly in the sky. Like bomb flowers are in caves and the deep. Muddle blooms are really only in the deep. Poes are only down there.
Well, I mean, but it's not like, you get Poes in the deep. It's not like you need Poes in the sky.
True.
Like,
but like you get bright blooms mostly in caves.
Things are regional, right? So if you want certain things, you have to go to certain regions.
Yep.
Right?
Like those fire fruits are only in places either in the sky or where sky stuff has fallen. Like they're not in the rest of the map.
Yep.
Oh, this game is so good. And the last thing they did is I think they kicked up the plot details a little bit compared to recent Zeldas like Breath of the Wild. The cutscenes are longer.
Usually
they're
Zelda
better
games
written.
They're sparse on the like explicit plot. You don't have cutscenes and dialogue, right? It's just sort of like, there might be like someone talks to you a little bit in a town kind of stuff, right? Or a lot of the plot is just like when you beat a dungeon, the sage of the dungeon will talk to you and tell you, what's going on.
Yeah, this one has a lot more direct plot. Like even in the world, like the Sheikah you're working with and like all the people who are doing stuff, they're all like, oh shit, yeah, like there's some Ganon shit going on, so we organized an army to go deal with it, and like everyone in the world kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah, the plot isn't just at the beginning of the game and at the end. It's also like it's developing as the game continues. Like things are happening, right? Whereas, Breath of the Wild was much more like older Zeldas where at the start, they tell you, at least after the tutorial,
and they're like, okay, go beat Ganon when you're ready.
You get all the info, like, okay, there's 4 divine beasts, and we got to beat Ganon. Go do it. And then you do it, and then the plot happens at the end.
Yep.
Whereas here, it's a lot more like, some other video games where the plot is going along as the game goes along.
And not gonna be real.
Separate plot threads, like the order of all that doesn't matter. It's an open world. You can't control the order. So they did it in a way where the order doesn't matter. You just learn pieces of it as you complete different things, however you complete them.
Best cutscene, and the minor spoiler, but it was just so funny. There's a scene where Zelda's like back in the past with Rauru, like the old king of Hyrule, and Ganondorf is like basically there saying he's pledging his support. And after he leaves, the whole time you're watching the scene, you're thinking, Zelda, just tell him that's Ganon. Like, that's obviously Ganon. The plot can't be so stupid that no one saw this coming. As soon as he leaves, Zelda's like, yo, that's Ganon. Raur's like, you think I don't fucking know that? That guy's dangerous. I'm keeping an eye on him, and I might have to kill him. Like, nobody's stupid in the cutscenes. Every time you think there's going to be one of those traditional Zelda plots where people just like don't see the obvious evil thing happening, everybody sees the obvious evil thing happening immediately. Nobody's stupid.
In Ocarina of Time, it's like, Ganon fools the king of Hyrule, just doesn't fool Zelda.
Yep.
Right?
Ganon doesn't fool anyone in this game except, I guess, the Gyarados.
Right, he doesn't fool them. He's just like, all right, he keeps trying to fool people, and he fools stupid people, but mostly he's just like, all right, I'll overpower you because I'm super powerful again and deal with it, right? And it's like, thank you, that's what you should be doing.
But just the fact that Zelda's like, I think he's evil, and Raur's like, no shit.
He's like a James Bond villain who just shoots Bond, like, bam!
Yep.
It's like, that's Ganon, and it's like, that's, it's a pretty cool Ganon to do that, right?
But the cleverness of this plot, and it really stuck with me because it was so apparent, and I hope everyone saw this, but because the rough plot is Zelda got sent back in time, so, like, that's your kind of... Link is literally following the Legend of Zelda to save Zelda. Like, there it is. It's the Legend of Zelda, straight up.
Mm.
So, yeah, this game is great, and I could probably talk forever about specific things I liked about it. So I guess something that stood out, the Yiga clan, at least the part of it I encountered, being all Mad Max with their stupid machines is hilarious.
Yeah, they're a lot weaker, I think, than in Breath of the Wild.
At least so far, yeah. They go down like partly because they're in these giant Mad Max looking machines driving around like
I haven't
by their
seen those ones. I've just seen ones normal walking around.
Oh, I found an outpost of theirs. Like they built this fort and they surrounded it with Zonai machines, and they're like all there driving around with these like electric powered death machines. But they kind of don't drive them like shit, and they're so easy to beat that it's really funny.
Yeah, they're definitely branded. Whereas in the first Breath of the Wild, they were kind of strong.
Now they're kind of Team Rockety.
They're very Team Rocket, incompetent, and goofy.
Yep, Gleeoks are real scary.
Right. The point is that the original thing I said, right? I was skeptical, of you're really gonna make a direct sequel, right? And not, that's not the Nintendo way. And it's like, no, we really. Did not disappoint. We went all out. This is actually an all new, all bigger, revolutionary deal.
But it feels like they really, really studied the response to Breath of the Wild and used that to make this just a better game.
They kept the same core, right? Which is something they usually don't do, right? They kept the same core, the same basic systems, and they just made not an incremental improvement, but they pushed it several times forward to where it's just truly unbelievable. And I wish they would, for the other games, right, where they do keep changing things up, right? It's the other Nintendo games, it's okay. We did a game, a Mario, and now we're gonna do a completely different Mario, right? We weren't satisfied doing the same thing again, right? It's come on, do the same thing again and just level it up instead, just like you did here, right? Take a Super Metroid and just level it up, layer 2 more maps on top of it, and put another, right? But they don't,
Yep.
I haven't seen them do that. Hopefully, they'll do it with their other franchises now. Right.
Well, considering that I think it's safe to say that Tears of the Kingdom is an unmitigated success.
Yeah,
I see no credible criticism of this game except on the most minor details.
I don't. What All right, is there a negative thing I can say about this?
I'm trying to think of anything I would say negative.
Short.
Yeah.
Life is too short. I don't have time for all this.
Yeah, I actually do have other things I need to be doing in my life, so I can't.
There were some duplication cheats that I took advantage of, but now they patched them out, which is you're really going to expect me to farm all this items?
So I have found so far, I am getting everything I need as I want it without needing to farm anything so far.
Except the main thing you got to farm for in this one and Breath of the Wild is upgrading your armor all the way.
Yep.
Right? The highest level armor upgrades require a pile of dragon scales and all sorts of diamonds and shit.
Yeah, and I probably won't bother with that. I'm not going to farm anything beyond what is reasonable.
No,
because you don't need them.
You don't need it, but the highest level armor upgrades make you basically, it's like getting the red ring. It's you don't need it to beat Zelda 1.
Yep.
But boy, is that nice to have.
That is true.
It's if you're not super skilled at the actiony parts, if you have the red, if you get the highest level armor, you could just take out a Lionel and get hit a whole bunch and still take him down, right? No problem. And that's what I want. But you got to farm to get that, which is.
Let's see. What have I done so far? I got about 30 shrines. I haven't done that many shrines. Because Emily got the Master Sword right away, way fast.
I definitely got more shrines than that. I must have 50 or 60.
Yeah, I haven't done that many shrines because my strategy is one, I got 2 full rings of stamina. I took almost no hearts, and I play this game the way I played Breath of the Wild. Just don't get hit. Just be good.
I think I might have 60 something shrines because by my math, I've got the amount of heart containers I've gotten from shrines might be 16 or 15.
I've only got 7 hearts because I did all stamina.
Right, so I only get heart containers. I've never needed.
You're gonna regret that.
No, I won't.
Yeah, I absolutely am sure you're gonna regret that.
I'll be fine. So then, 15 shrines times 4, or 15 heart containers times 4 is 60. So
I looted Hyrule Castle right away. I also looted one of the labyrinths right away.
Yeah, I tried to go to a labyrinth, and it was so dangerous at the entrance that I beat the dangerous thing at the entrance, but then I said, that was cost me a lot of resources, and it was the entrance, so I'm going to not go further.
I think the labyrinths are not created because one thing I've noticed, the game when they made this game, they definitely remembered the great attractors of the first game, like the things you would go seek out that you'd have a memory of, but they remixed them all just enough. So like you go to one of the labyrinths because you remember where it was from the first time you played, and it's crazy dangerous and there's new stuff there. But you go to one of the other ones and it's actually not so bad, and there's like pretty low-hanging fruit plot stuff you can just do there.
Anyway, I mean, if you aren't playing this game, it's like, and you have a Switch, I don't know
This is like
literally everyone from every walk of video gaming, right? Whether like
all my coworkers are playing it. Like everyone is playing it.
But it's like fighting game people, RPG people, puzzle people. It's like everybody.
I'll go as far as to say that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom alone, just those two games, are enough to require the purchase of a Switch, even if you've never played any other Switch game.
Like, how could they, it's like usually you think of video games, right? Even the ones with the broadest appeal, right? As being something that like, yeah, there's people like a certain kind, right?
Yeah, you know what people like? Zelda games.
You don't see fighting game people playing StarCraft too often or Counter-Strike too often, right? But it's like they've managed to make this game that like literally like must be every single person who plays video games is playing this game, right? Just everybody. And it's like that in itself, right? Forgetting that the game design itself or any of those details, right? But just to make a game with such a broad audience, it's like to make any art with such a broad audience is, very difficult, right?
Like if you
making a movie that like just, or a song that like just everyone fucking loved that song, whether they were a metalhead or a Taylor Swift fan or a K-pop fan or a rap fan or whatever, and everyone loved this song, it's like how hard that would be.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
And these two games, like if you want to make games, if you think you have aspirations to be a game designer someday, like these are two games to just play the hell out of and study and research and like really inspect while you play.
I think
because
it
they
might
are
actually I think it might hurt more than it helps because it's like, it's sort of like trying to watch, LeBron to figure out how you're going to play basketball.
But like one thing I'd point out, the graphics aren't that good. Like there's frame stutters, the textures are like ultra simple. Things look real quote unquote bad if you get up close to them, except like important plot things. And it doesn't matter at all because the game's so good that no one notices that.
Nope, no one gives a shit.
Meanwhile, you got the people who obsess over making their photorealistic Call of Duty 15 or whatever, but
someone spends $2,000, it's like better value for your money, right? $2,000 GPU to get more frames in Counter-Strike that you're
the Nintendo Switch is a potato compared to even my current video card, and yet this game is better than any game I've got on the PC.
Nintendo Switch even cost, right? A few $100?
Yeah. For the cost of a PlayStation 5, you could get Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and a Switch.
MSRP OLED Switch is $360, and you add 60, so $420. So for $420, you can get a Switch and Tears of the Kingdom, and for 4 times the price, you can get a GPU with no games. The rest of the computer, right? Or at least the top GPU.
While you spent years wasting time making photorealistic textures of bathrooms, I studied making a good game.
Yeah, that's right. So, somehow they done did it.
Yep.
Right?
This
more than,
like S tier 11 out of 10. I don't know what else I could say. Like this is one.
I wasn't hyped when they announced it. I was like, oh, you're just gonna make another one of the same? Okay, whatever. Right? It's like, nope. We'll show you.
Yep. Like
you showed me.
I would be hard pressed to name many games that I would say are in any sense of the word better than this game.
I don't. It may be the best video game.
Yeah.
At least the best single-player video game that has ever been made by anyone ever to this point in history.
Yep. Like, I'd struggle to think... even there are games that might have had better pure experiences, but they're not as big and long as this. This is so consistently that for so much gameplay.
I don't know.
I haven't even got all the fucking towers yet, and I already got my money's worth.
Is it like I think the list might be like Tears of the Kingdom, Tetris. It's like what,
right?
What else is that? I don't know. Everything else feels less than.
Yeah, like
in some aspect. Even Super Metroid, which I usually say is the best game.
Yeah, Half-Life even like nah. This game kicks
No.
the shit out of Half-Life by most metrics.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna.
Nope. Half-Life was a
And we don't even have to
revolutionary game
wait
for all
the test of
time.
time on this one, right? That's how strong it is. Usually, I can be like, oh, let's but
Yeah, you know us. We're the kinds of people who will love a game, give it a 10 out of 10, and say maybe in 20 years we can agree that this game deserves to be
well, we
on
learned
a
our
list.
lesson from a lot of things that we liked a whole lot earlier in life that later on we're like, those are just okay, right? It's like I loved the shit out of Trigun, the anime, when it was new, but now it's like it's good.
It's good.
It's not like my favorite right now,
Yeah.
But
Still gotta watch the new one.
Yeah, right.
Also, last thing I want to say, that fucking guy and his dubious signs. One, never hire that construction company if that's who works for them.
No, that's the thing I think is the funniest. Well, I guess you haven't met the president who's on the sign, have you?
Nope.
Okay, but the construction company is great. It's just that guy who works for them who's a doofus.
But dude, like, I love that his puzzles are everywhere, but he just gets more and more, like, it starts like, oh, his sign is hard to prop up. A little bit later in the game, it's like the sign just has the barest stick at the bottom, and it's hanging.
If it's pointy at the bottom, that's the most annoying one.
And it is pointing straight off a cliff in the middle of Hebra in the snow with the wind blowing against it. Like, what the fuck? All right. I had to build like a whole fucking crane contraption to hold that thing up.
Yeah, it's like, sometimes I see a Korok and I'm like, I don't got time for you. But if I see the sign guy, it's like, I'll always got time for that.
Oh, of course. I always do sign guy. Though, the Koroks, now that I'm getting better at making machines, I'm doing the Koroks more instead of coming back to them.
Plenty of Koroks, but I'm just saying, when I see a really annoying one, I'm like, and it's not going in my direction, I'm like, all right, fuck that.
But I always do sign guy.
Yeah. Sign guy. I hope I can do. I will probably do all the sign guy, and if I stop finding sign guys, I'll probably do some cheating to get a map of where they are or something.
Yep. And since Emily got the Master Sword, like basically immediately, I'm gonna try to get the Master Sword tonight. I'm mostly there. All right, let's end that. It's a solid.